I'm Matthew Leverage. I'm Commonwealth's attorney for Russell and Wayne counties in the 57th Circuit, and currently am president of the Kentucky Commonwealth Attorneys Association. With me here today is Chris Coron. Chris is the Commonwealth's attorney in Warren County and is the Commonwealth Attorney's legislative liaison. And Rick Bartley. Rick is the Commonwealth's attorney in Pike County.
I've noticed that it's been 14 months since the effective date of what this House Bill 463 is, this criminal law bill, and there was a report on the progress to date on that. And Chris, you're our legislative liaison, and what did they report as to the progress of this legislation?
Inexplicably, the Courier Journal issued an op-ed piece saying basically House Bill 463 wasn't working fast enough, and that inmates were not being released from the Department of Corrections at a quick enough pace. They've now chosen to point the finger now at the parole board as the sole cause of this, not taking into account, obviously these are defendants that have been released. There's a large recidivism rate. Letting inmates out of the Department of Corrections without the infrastructure in place to truly deal with them, there's really no realistic option, but they will end up back in corrections.
What's your take on this catch and release experiment, Rick, up in the eastern part of the state?
Well, the people up there, one of our major problems is the theft of copper by drug dealers and drug addicts. They steal copper and take it and sell it, use the money to buy drugs. They're knocking out all of our safety structures up there for telephones. People can't call 911. They're knocking out power lines. People that are at home that are dependent upon oxygen can't get it. And yet, those are nonviolent crimes according to this bill. And those are the people that when we lock them up, they're running right back out the back door quicker than we can put them in the front door, committing new crimes every day. It's not working.
What about in your area down in the Lakes region in southern Kentucky, Matt?
One of the biggest issues we're having, I think, is one that's faced all over the state, is people that are crime victims of what's been termed property crimes don't understand why the people who commit offenses against them aren't really held accountable under the law. That they're treated as if the crimes don't exist, or that it's simply just not important. And we've been dealing with a lot of questions about why is it like that, and what can we do to change that.
Matt, I'll tell you two things that I'm seeing up there. People are losing faith in the criminal justice system, and people are starting to take matters in their own hands, and it's not a good situation.
I agree with Rick. I mean, we still live in an area that in many instances is fairly rural. I know a lot of eastern Kentucky is, and I know the largest majority of my jurisdiction is fairly rural, and people are simply afraid. There's no real recourse for committing what's called a property crime. If somebody breaks in your barn and steals your tractor and takes away your livelihood, it seems that under the law as it's written now, nobody really seems to care. And as prosecutors, it's frustrating for us because our hands are tied with what we can do. And people are really beginning to get frustrated with, like Rick said, the criminal justice system as a whole, and what they perceive as simply a lack of caring about what happens to them, as opposed to a lot of caring from their perspective about what's happening to these defendants.
I read recently in this editorial that you mentioned, Chris, in the Courier Journal, that one of the co-authors of this bill, a Representative John Tilley from Hopkinsville, says that we need to have patience because we are in fact in the midst of a cultural shift. That's a little scary to me. What does that mean to you and to prosecutors and law enforcement as well as the victims of these crimes?
I think as we look at the criminal code, what we've got to do is shift our priority. We've got to go back to a priority that the victim comes first in the criminal justice system. We've got a lot of crimes that are deemed nonviolent, but that are extremely violent. We're dealing with second-degree manslaughter. So many times you see in vehicular homicide cases, that's a nonviolent offense. And people are staggered at the fact that someone can get 10 years for second-degree manslaughter, but the defendant can be out in 2 years, sometimes even less with jail credit. We have failed the victims across the Commonwealth by not being truthful to them with our sentences, what they need, and hopefully I testified before the legislature about a week ago, and as I said to them, it's time to put the victim first in our criminal justice system.
Rick, you have been very outspoken in your comments about the need for real, live truth in sentencing. What are your thoughts on what's going on now?
Well, I've been around a long time, and we first started truth in sentencing because we wanted to tell the jury what these sentences really meant when they were considering the appropriate punishment. And we made some inroads into that. Now, truth in sentencing is out the window. It's no truth in sentencing. What's happening is the legislature's passing a law and saying this person can get 5 or 10 years. But what they're not telling people is they're opening the back door of that jail and letting them out sometimes in as little as 15%. A 1-year prison sentence now, the person only has to serve 2 months before they're eligible to be released. With the good time credits that Chris mentioned, people that are getting 10 years, getting their parole denied, are only serving 5.5 or 6. It's a lie. It's being told in the courtrooms across the state every day by the prosecutors, by the judges, and the defense attorneys to these jurors. And it's an out-and-out lie that we should not have to tell them things that aren't true. We ought to be able to tell them a 10-year sentence means 2 years. But with all the backdoor deals that's being made on this parole and good time credit, nobody, even us as prosecutors, we don't know what's going on.
Well, thank you, gents.
Appreciate the opportunity to be here.